We were on day 3 of searching for a hiker off a trailhead near Bishop, up in the eastern Sierras, July of 2021. The guy we were looking for was named Marcus, 32, went out on a Wednesday morning for what his girlfriend said was supposed to be a day hike. When he wasn't back by dark, she called the sheriff. By Friday morning, I was standing at the staging area holding a clipboard and a coffee that had already gone cold, waiting for sector assignments. I've been doing volunteer SAR work in California for about 6 years. Most calls end one of two ways. Either you find the person cold and dehydrated but walking, or you don't find them at all, and the case sits open until hunters or the snowmelt bring something back years later. The middle outcome, where you find them dead, is rarer than people think. Mountains eat evidence. We had a team of 4 that morning. Rick was the coordinator, ex-Navy, ran things out of his truck with a laminated topo spread across the hood. Then there was Denise, a nurse from Reno who handled medical. Ellis was our tracker, quiet guy, spent his weekends running dogs out of a kennel outside Truckee, and me. Rick assigned us in pairs at first, but by the second push he split us up because we had a lot of ground to cover and not enough bodies. I got the north-facing slope of a drainage about 4 miles in from Marcus's last confirmed GPS ping. Nothing about the terrain was unusual for that part of the range. Loose scree, some old lodgepole, a few boulder fields where the trail thinned out and disappeared into rock. I had a whistle, a radio, a GPS unit, a med kit, and enough water for a full day. Rick called it in at 11 and told me to sweep down and east, work my way back toward a saddle where he'd meet me at 4. I was maybe an hour in when I smelled the fire. Not smoke exactly, more like the after smell of a fire that had burned out days ago. Wet ash. You can miss it up there if the wind's wrong, but I'd stepped into a little pocket between 2 ridges and it was sitting in there like it had nowhere to go. I called Rick on the radio. He said mark it and check it, but stay on comms. The bivouac was tucked into an overhang about 50 yards off my line, and I would have walked right past it if not for the smell. Small ring of stones, ash still dark in the middle. 2 empty cans of Chef Boyardee, one of them with the spoon still in it. A coil of climbing rope, maybe 40 feet, still looped and clean, not weathered. A folding saw, a blue tarp weighted down at the corners with river rocks that had been carried up from somewhere lower. I stood there for a minute trying to make it fit. It didn't look like Marcus's kit. His girlfriend had given us a photo of him leaving the trailhead. Small day pack, no rope, no tarp. This was somebody set up for a week. Then I saw the backpacks. They were leaned up against the rock wall of the overhang, out of sight from the trail side. 3 of them. A red osprey, a green keltie, and a black one with no visible brand. Older canvas straps, the kind you don't really see on the trail anymore. They were sitting shoulder to shoulder, upright, like somebody had lined them up on purpose, not dumped, placed. Each one had a paper tag tied to the top strap with what looked like fishing line. I want to be clear about what I did next because I've thought about it a lot. I did not open the bags. I walked up slow and I read the tags. Each one had a name written in black marker, first name and last name. Under each name, a phone number with a California area code. That was it. I keyed the radio and asked Rick to repeat back 3 names. He did, and I could hear the shift in his voice on the second one. "Where are you?" he said. I gave him my coordinates. He told me to stay put, don't touch anything, don't move anything, and to walk back out to a spot where I could see 100 yards in every direction and wait. I did that. I walked about 60 feet out onto an open shelf of granite where I had a clear view of the whole basin, and I sat down with my back to a boulder, and I watched. I'll tell you what went through my head sitting there. It wasn't fear at first. It was the very stupid, very slow process of trying to remember whether any of those names sounded familiar. One of them did. Faintly, like a briefing I'd sat through a couple of years back and half listened to at the time. Rick radioed back about 20 minutes later. He was talking careful, the way he talks when he doesn't want to say something over an open channel. He said all 3 names were in the SAR database. All 3 people were still listed as missing. The earliest one was from 2014. Then he said, "Sit tight. Don't move. I'm sending Ellis up to you and I'm calling the sheriff." I sat on that rock for close to 2 hours. That's the part I don't like to describe, because nothing happened during it, and that's the point. The wind moved through the lodge poles a couple of times. A raven landed on a snag about 30 feet from me, and stared for a long minute, and then left. Once I thought I heard a rock shift somewhere higher up on the slope, but when I looked I couldn't see anything, and I have been in the mountains long enough to know rocks shift on their own all the time. But I also knew that whoever had set up that camp hadn't been gone long. The ash was dry on top, but I'd pushed a stick into it earlier, and the layer underneath was still damp from the little rain we'd had 2 nights back. That camp had been active less than 48 hours ago. Somebody had built it, cooked in it, coiled that rope, and walked away from 3 backpacks with names on them. You don't leave gear like that in the Sierras. Not real gear, not in July, when a bear will come through and tear a pack apart for a single granola bar. That rope alone was probably $300. Somebody had left it and expected it to sit undisturbed, or hadn't walked away, was maybe a quarter mile off through the trees, watching a guy in a red SAR vest sit on a rock. That's what I couldn't stop thinking about. Ellis came up the slope about 90 minutes in. He didn't say much. He looked at the camp, he looked at the tags, and then he looked at me and shook his head once. Slow. We waited together for the sheriff's people to hike in. Neither of us went back near the overhang. They got there before dark. 2 deputies and a guy in plain clothes who never gave me his name. He wore hiking boots that looked like they'd been bought that week. They photographed everything from a dozen angles. They bagged the tags separately from the backpacks. They loaded the 3 packs into contractor-grade trash bags and carried them out on frame carriers. The plainclothes guy asked me maybe 6 questions, all of them about how I'd approached the site, whether I'd touched anything, whether I'd seen anyone on my way in or out. I answered him honestly. He wrote nothing down that I saw. When I asked whether the names on the tags meant what I thought they meant, he said, "We'll be in touch through your coordinator if there's anything you need to know." Then he asked me not to discuss what I'd seen with anyone outside the team. I asked if that was a legal instruction or a professional one. He said, "Whichever one gets you to do it." Marcus, the hiker we'd been looking for, got found alive that same evening. Ellis's dogs picked him up about 3 kilometers south of where I'd been, in a drainage he'd wandered into after losing the trail on the 2nd day. He was dehydrated and had a bad ankle, but he was going to be fine. His girlfriend cried on Rick's shoulder in the parking lot at the staging area. I saw it happen. It was the good part of the day, and I tried to hold on to it on the drive home. Nobody said anything about the backpacks. I waited a week. Then I wrote a formal inquiry to the SAR coordination office. I gave them the date, the coordinates, my incident number. I asked whether the 3 individuals whose names had been on those tags had been located, or whether the case had been reclassified, or whether there was anything the volunteer team should know for future searches in that area. I never got a reply. I asked Rick about it once, at a training weekend that fall. He looked at me for a second, and then he said, "I don't know anything more than you do." And I believed him, mostly. Rick is not a good liar, but I also noticed he didn't ask me any follow-up questions, and Rick is a guy who normally asks follow-up questions about everything. I still do SAR. I've been on maybe 15 call-outs since. I've been back into that same wilderness twice, though not into that specific drainage. The assignments haven't sent me there, and I haven't volunteered for anything close to it. The thing I keep coming back to is the way they were placed. Not the backpacks themselves, the way they were placed. Somebody took the time to line them up neat, tie a tag on each one with fishing line, write the names clean and readable in fresh marker. That is not panic. That is somebody who wanted them found, eventually, by the right kind of person. I don't know what to do with that. Most days I try not to do too much with it. The job came in through a referral in early August, one of those Atlanta summers where the AC runs so hard the vents sweat and you can hear the compressor kick on from 3 rooms away. My home office is the converted sunroom on the back of the house, off Ponce, and by 2 in the afternoon the light through the blinds turns everything the color of weak tea. I remember exactly what the room looked like the first time I noticed the pattern, and I keep coming back to that detail like it's going to explain something. The client was a woman named Elaine, late 40s, retired teacher, wanted a full maternal line workup for her granddaughter's christening gift. Standard job. She sent me a shoebox of photos, a stack of loose certificates, and a login for a shared Ancestry account she'd already started. Paid the deposit the same day. Nice, quiet client, the kind you hope for. I usually build a rough tree in the first week just to get the shape of it. On the 3rd day I noticed the first thing. Elaine's great-grandfather was named Walter, born September 3, 1901, worked as a pharmacist in a small town outside Macon. His son, her grandfather, also named Walter, born September 3, 1935. Also a pharmacist, same town. I made a note. Nothing weird about that on its own. Junior gets senior's name, family business. It happens. Except her father was named Walter too, born September 3, 1969. Ran a pharmacy in a strip mall in Decatur until '08. I sat with that for a minute. 3 Walters, 3 September 3rds, 3 pharmacists. The odds are bad, but not impossible. I've seen weirder coincidences in Georgia families where they married cousins for 4 generations, and everyone's named after the same great uncle who fought at Chickamauga. I kept going. That's the job. The wives were the next thing. Walter Sr. married a woman named Cora, born February 11th, 1903. She was listed on 2 censuses as a seamstress, and there's a little ad in a 1928 paper for her doing alterations out of her house. Walter Jr. married a Cora, born February 11th, 1937, seamstress. Ran a small shop on the same street as the pharmacy. Elaine's mother was named Cora, born February 11th, 1971. Alterations business out of her house until she got sick. I stopped for the day, went and got a sandwich. Came back and thought maybe I'd copied a field wrong from one record to another. That happens. You get tired, you fat finger a year, you build a whole branch off the wrong person. So I pulled the original scans, death certificates from Bibb County, one from Fulton, marriage licenses, a baptism record from a Baptist church that had put its whole archive on Family Search in 2016. The dates matched, every one of them. I checked the birth month field twice. Then I opened a second window and pulled the records fresh, in case Ancestry was auto-populating something from a linked profile. Same dates. I checked the handwriting on the certificates. It wasn't a database error. Different clerks had written those certificates in different counties, sometimes 40 years apart. I told my husband about it that night at dinner, and he laughed and said something about how people in old families just do that. They name kids after grandparents. They take over the shop. I said the birthdays were the same. He said, weird. Then he asked how the chicken was. I don't blame him. It sounds like nothing when you say it out loud in a kitchen. The next week I went deeper and it stopped sounding like nothing. Each Walter lost a younger brother when he was 9. Walter Sr. S brother drowned in a pond in 1910. 2-paragraph write-up in a Macon paper. Walter Jr. S brother drowned in 1944. A farm pond, no witnesses. Walter III didn't have a brother, but he had a cousin who lived with the family, and that cousin drowned in a motel swimming pool in 1978. Walter would have been 9. The obituary is 1 line long. Each Cora had a daughter at 24, named Ruth in the first 2 generations. Elaine's older sister was named Ruth. She died in a car accident in her 30s. The first 2 Ruths also died in car accidents in their 30s. One in 1951, one in 1985. I want to be honest about how this felt, because if I say it wrong, it sounds like I had some big moment. That's not how it went. I found the pieces over about 10 days, and every time I found one, I told myself it was because I was looking for it. Any family that's been in one county for 100 years is going to have repeats, but I was checking every single thing, not just ancestry hints, which are half garbage. Original county records, handwriting, witnesses on marriage licenses. I found a photo of Walter Sr. behind his counter in 1952. I found a photo of Walter Jr. behind his counter in 1988. Different men, different faces. The one thing I could rule out was that this was somehow the same person, which had crossed my mind and which I'm embarrassed to admit. They were different people. They just kept doing the same things on the same days. There were smaller things too. Each Walter's pharmacy caught fire once. Minor damage, no injuries. Each Cora had a sister who moved to Florida and stopped talking to the family. Each family owned a black dog named Duke at some point. I only caught the last one because Elaine had included a photo in the shoebox of her mother holding a dog with a handwritten note on the back that said, Duke 02. And I remembered a note in an insurance record about a Duke biting a mailman in 1978, and a 1949 census where a Duke was listed under Walter Jr. S household as, apparently, a household member. Someone had written dog in the margin later, in different ink. I stayed up too late one night making a side-by-side spreadsheet, just the pattern. 3 columns. Each row a life event. When I printed it out and put the 3 columns next to each other, my hand went a little cold. I want to say something happened in the house after that the lights flickered or I heard a noise in the attic. Nothing did. The AC kicked on. My dog snored on the rug. I sat at my desk and looked at 3 columns of the same life lived by 3 different people, and the only thing that felt wrong was inside me. The delivery meeting was on a Thursday. Elaine drove over from Buckhead. I'd printed the tree on the big roll paper, the way I do for clients who want the wall hanger version, and I'd put the sourcing binder on the desk next to it. I had not printed the spreadsheet. I don't know exactly why I didn't. She sat down. She was wearing a linen blouse that had traveled well from the car and a pair of reading glasses on a chain around her neck. I unrolled the paper. She put the glasses on and started at the top, working down. Her finger moved along the branches. When she got to her father's line, she slowed down. When she got to her grandfather's line, she stopped. She looked at it for a long time, long enough that I heard the AC cycle off and on again. Then she closed the binder. She hadn't opened it yet. She just put her hand on it and closed it, like it had been open. "This is beautiful work," she said. "Thank you." I said, "I found some things I wanted to ask you about, patterns in your mother's side." She was already reaching for her purse. She took out her checkbook, the paper kind, and started writing. "It's just family," she said. She didn't look up. "Nothing special." She wrote the check for the full amount. Then she wrote another one, same amount, and slid them both across the desk. "For your time," she said, "and I'd rather you didn't keep working on it. I have what I need." I looked at the second check. I looked at her. She was still not looking at me. She was folding the tree back up along its creases, carefully, the way you'd fold a flag. "Are you sure?" I said. "There's a whole line on your grandmother's side I haven't touched yet." "I'm sure," she said. And then she looked up. Her face was completely calm. That was the part I keep coming back to. Not scared, not warning me off, just tired, in a way that had nothing to do with the drive over. "It's just family," she said again. "You understand." I said I did. I walked her to her car. She thanked me twice more. She drove off down the street, and I watched her taillights until she turned onto Ponce. Then I went back inside and I deleted the spreadsheet. I shredded the printout. I emptied the recycling bin on my laptop, and I unlinked the shared Ancestry account, and I put the shoebox of her photos in a padded envelope and mailed it back to her the next morning without a note. I cashed both checks. I've been in this work for 11 years. I've seen families lie about affairs, about adoptions, about a grandfather who was in prison when he was supposed to be at war. People pay you to find things and then pay you again to unfind them. That part is not new. What I keep thinking about is the way she folded the paper, like she'd folded it before. I don't work on her family anymore. I don't take referrals from anyone she knows. If someone calls and mentions her name, I say I'm booked through the year, and then I actually do book myself through the year, out of a kind of superstition I'd rather not name. Elaine's granddaughter would have been born around now, if she was born on schedule. I know when she was due because I built the tree. I know what they were going to name her. I know what day. I know the profession her mother chose. I'm not going to write it down. I'm not going to look. That's the deal I made with myself in the sunroom after I heard her car pull away, and it's the deal I've kept. It's just family, nothing special. The thing about pipeline inspection in the Gulf is how it lulls you. 90 feet down, hand over hand along a 14-inch steel line, checking welds and anodes, listening to your own breath cycle back through the helmet. Water the color of weak tea. Visibility maybe 6 feet on a good day. You do it enough, it stops feeling like diving. It feels like janitor work you happen to do underwater. June of 2022. We were working a stretch of line about 40 miles south of Fort Shawn. Small crew boat, 4-man team, standard surface supplied setup. Dive supervisor was a guy named Boone, been in the industry since before I was born. Chain-smoking Marlboros between dives, calling everyone brother, running the deck like it was the easiest job in the world. Second dive of the morning was mine. Water was warmer than usual for June, close to 80 at the surface, cooler on the bottom. The sun was already brutal when I stepped off the platform. Boone was fanning himself with a clipboard. Descent was routine. Comms clear, umbilical paying out clean, standard 3-minute stops, taste of dry gas in my mouth from the panel. I hit the line at 92 feet and started my walk east, running the video off the helmet cam, calling out node readings to the supervisor. 20 minutes in, I found it. At first, I thought it was a piece of hardware someone had left behind. Divers do that sometimes. Forget a tool, and it stays there until someone else picks it up years later. But this wasn't a tool. It was a box, rectangular, maybe the size of a hardback book, matte gray, magnetically fixed to the underside of the pipe at the 6 o'clock position. Not clamped, not welded, just stuck there, flush against the steel. I stared at it for a minute, ran my light across the surface. No markings, no serial number of any kind. The seams were tight and welded, and there was a small port on one end covered by what looked like a rubber cap. That was it. The rest of the line, everything within 20 feet of it, was covered in the usual Gulf funk. Barnacles and that green-brown film of algae you get down there. But the box was clean, no growth on it, no sediment. Whatever it was had been placed there recently. Days, maybe, not weeks. In the Gulf, a week is enough to start collecting slime. I called it in. "Boone, I got something on the line here, attached, not company gear." Pause, then his voice, slower than usual. "Describe it, brother." I described it. The size, the magnetic mount, the clean surface, the little rubber port on the end. I could hear him breathing on the other side of the comms. "Any wires? Anything running off of it?" I checked. Ran my glove around the seam, felt underneath. No cable, no antenna I could see, just the box. "Negative, it's sealed, just sitting there." Another pause, longer this time. "Pop it loose, bring it up, slow." I got my fingers under the edge. The magnets were stronger than I expected. Had to work it side to side to break the seal. When it finally came free, it was heavier than it looked. Solid, something inside it, something dense, but nothing shifted when I moved it. Packed tight. Whatever was in there for good. I clipped it to a lift bag, inflated the bag with a shot from my whip, and watched it rise into the tea-colored haze above me. Then I finished my inspection. That's what you do. You don't cut a dive short unless something is wrong with you or the gear. So I kept walking east, kept my hand on the pipe. But I was thinking about that box the whole way. Surface interval was quiet, not silent, just quiet in a way that wasn't normal for our boat. Marcus, our tender, usually ran his mouth non-stop between dives. That afternoon, he set the box on the aft deck on top of a piece of plywood and then just kind of stood back from it. Didn't touch it, didn't ask about it. Went and got himself a Gatorade and sat on the port rail. Boone came out of the wheelhouse and looked at it for a long time. He didn't crouch down. He didn't turn it over. He stood about 6 feet away with his arms crossed and just looked. Then he pulled his phone out of his back pocket and walked to the bow. He was on that phone for maybe 10 minutes. I couldn't hear him. Every so often, he'd glance back at the deck, at the box, then back at the phone. His face didn't change the whole time. That was what got me, honestly. His face didn't change. When he came back, he crouched down next to me. I was sitting on the dive stage drinking water. "You're gonna go back down," he said. "You're gonna put that back exactly where you found it. Same spot, same orientation, same magnetic contact. You understand?" I looked at him. I said, "Same orientation how?" "I didn't mark it." "You've got the video," he said. "Watch it. Match it." I looked at the box on the plywood, then at him. "Boone, what is it?" He held my eyes for a second. Just a second. Then he said, "It's not ours. That's all you need. Put it back. Don't ask again." I don't know how to describe what his voice did in that moment. It wasn't scared. That's the thing. It wasn't scared at all. It was the voice of a guy telling you not to touch a downed power line. Not fear, just certainty. Certainty that you did not want the next part of the conversation. I nodded. I watched my helmet footage in the wheelhouse on a laptop, freeze framing the moment I first spotted the box. Got the angle, got the exact section of pipe, the anode I'd passed 6 feet earlier, the little bit of net snagged on a bolt 8 feet past. I could put it back within a couple inches. Maybe better. Second dive went down at 2 in the afternoon. Water was flatter than in the morning. The box came down with me in a mesh bag clipped to my harness. It kept bumping my thigh as I descended, and every time it bumped, I felt it in my teeth. I found the anode, then the piece of net. Then the exact spot. There was a faint clean patch on the underside of the pipe where the box had been sitting, a rectangle slightly lighter than the fouled steel around it, like a picture frame on a wall you'd taken down. I lined the box up with that patch, pressed it home. The magnets grabbed hard. Snap. I sat there in the water for maybe 30 seconds, one hand still on it. "It's back," I said. "Copy," Boone said. "Come home." The ascent was normal. Deco was normal. When I broke the surface, Boone was already waiting at the rail with a hand out, and he pulled me up and clapped me on the shoulder like I'd just done a routine job, and that was that. Nobody mentioned it at dinner, nobody mentioned it the next morning. Marcus was running his mouth again by breakfast, talking about his daughter's softball team. That night I lay in the crew bunk and stared up at the ceiling until I heard Marcus start snoring under me. I don't know what I was listening for. Something on deck, maybe. A boat coming up alongside us. There was nothing. Just the hum of the generator and the water slapping the hull. 3 days later, we ran the same section for a follow-up on a pressure anomaly. Different task, same line. I asked Boone if I could take the first dive. He looked at me for a second, then nodded. I went straight to the spot. Same anode. Same bit of netting, still there. The box was gone. There was still that clean rectangle of steel where it had been sitting. Slightly lighter than the metal around it. Nothing else. No scrape marks. No drag lines. Whoever had come for it had come clean, and they'd come in the 3 days between our jobs, between our boat leaving and our boat coming back. I finished my inspection, called in normal readings, came up, didn't say a word. When I was rinsing my gear that evening, Boone walked past me on the deck and slowed down for just a second. "All good on the east run?" he said. "All good," I said. He nodded and kept walking. I still work these lines. Same company, same stretch of Gulf, sometimes the same boat. I've passed that spot on the pipeline maybe 20 times since. I always look. It's a habit now. The same way you always check your mirror at a certain intersection because something happened there once. So far it's been empty. Just clean steel and the slow creep of algae filling the rectangle back in. Barnacles are starting to bridge it. Give it another year and you won't be able to tell anything was ever there. A younger diver on our crew, a kid we call Sledge, asked me once if I'd ever found anything weird on a line. Cash, drugs, a body, that kind of thing. I told him no. Told him the Gulf's boring most of the time, and that's the way you want it. He laughed. I let him laugh. I don't know who put it there. I don't know who took it back. What was inside it? I'm being straight when I say I don't want to know. I've thought about it enough at 3 in the morning to know that thinking about it doesn't help. Boone retired last spring. We had a little party for him on the boat, cake and everything. He shook my hand at the end of it and looked at me like he was going to say something. Then he didn't. He just squeezed my hand a little tighter than normal and let go. I passed the spot again last week on a routine flush job. Ran my light over the underside of the pipe. Clean line, nothing there, not yet. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Let me know down below which one was your favorite. Also, don't forget to check out the other vids on the channel for more scary 4chan stuff. See you soon. Bye.